Hey everyone, I'm Flo, Dude is behind the camera, and we are all about life made simple, ordinary, and joyful. Quite a few viewers have asked what type of vegetables I like to eat when we make Asian or Chinese dishes. So today we're going to prepare 3 of my favorite, and they're going to be simple and easy to do. So let's get started. These vegetables are pretty popular, especially in Vancouver. You can find them in the regular supermarkets, and they're relatively inexpensive, and they're great with Chinese dishes. And the way I prepare them is always just very simple, not a whole lot of flavor added to them. I grew up with my grandmother who had a vegetable garden in her backyard, and she would grow tons of veggies. It was a pretty big vegetable garden now that I think about it. In this little community that she lived in, a lot of the families had their own vegetable garden, and so they would all grow different vegetables and then just trade, which is awesome because you can have a whole variety of veggies without having to buy them. I wish I was more garden-y, but alas, I don't have a green thumb. Probably the most popular that you would know is this one. This is called Gai Lan. So Gai Lan essentially is kind of like broccoli. It has like kind of a broccoli flower. Well, my dad always told me that if you start to see them flower, like these white florets, little flowers, to take them off because that's where the bugs hang out, he said. So unless you want to eat bugs, remove them.
That's pretty solid advice.
Also, if they have a lot of, if a lot of the flowers have opened up, then it's not really great to buy because then they're not so tender, they're older and will be harder to eat. When I get them home, I usually just soak them in salt water because salt will kill any bugs in them, and then just rinse them really well a couple of times, especially in between where the leaves grow, because bugs can hide in there as well, and dirt. So just give them a good rinse. And then I'll trim off the bottom and leave them whole. Because you can also chop these ones up for stir fries because of the texture. They hold its shape and texture better in stir fries than those other vegetables. These are baby bok choy, and I prefer them more than the large ones. And it's just because they're tender, they're easy to eat, easy to cook. When you're washing them, make sure that you get in between all the layers as well. Just run water through them. And then again, I like to trim these at the bottom just a little bit, like not much off because it was dry in the store. And then I just cut them in half. And that I cook them like that. I don't cook them whole. That's just a preference. You can cook them whole if you wanted to. Okay. And this one is called Yao Choy Sum. I grew up with it being called Choy Sum, but lately, in the last several years, I've noticed that it's called Yu Choy in the stores. I'm not sure why the change, but anyways, make sure to cleanse inside in between the leaves. So with the Yao Choy, you're looking for yellow flowers, and the same thing. If you see them, just pluck them off. If there's too many of them, again, it means that it's a little bit older, so the greens are not so tender. But they do say that the most tender part of the choy is here, like where the bud is. So if you like that part, my kids like the leafy part. I like the stalks. So I think it's just a matter of preference.
I like the, yeah, right.
Right there?
Right there.
You like the tender part?
Yeah, I'm the fancy guy.
That's supposed to be the best part.
Well, you know it.
When you're at the store, make sure that the vegetable doesn't have this little white dot. Because that little white dot means that it's getting old. The inside is starting to hollow out, which will also make it more tough to eat. So if you see that, generally I try to cut it off, and if it keeps going, I just cut off until there isn't any anymore. So that part is the starting to dry out, and yeah, sometimes you can be deceived. It doesn't show right away that it's hollow on the inside, but some are really obvious. So try to avoid that if possible. So this is what you're looking for without the white dot. But sometimes when I cut into it, oh no, this one's good. Growing up, I remember always having a green leafy vegetable at the dinner table. Mom would make, I don't know, 4 to 5 dishes every night, which I just don't understand how that's possible. But one will always be a green leafy vegetable. Other vegetables don't count as vegetables, apparently. They have to be green and leafy. We're just bringing a pot of water to boil, and then we'll show you how simple this really is. Okay, I'm gonna add about 2 teaspoons of salt, and I'm using sea salt here, but you can use whatever you want. And about a tablespoon of vegetable oil, or whatever oil you like. And I'm going to cook the Bok Choy first. And it just all goes in, and you're just cooking it for about a minute. Just push all the leaves down into the water. And essentially, when the water comes back to a boil, it's done. Okay, we're almost there. And that's it. Depending on what else is for dinner, if it's like really saucy, I will just like not even add anything else to it. That's it. Otherwise, I would serve with just like a little bit of oyster sauce. Okay, next we're going to do the Gai Lan. And so our water is still salted. I'm gonna add a little bit more vegetable oil because some of that oil would have clinged to the vegetables I just pulled out. And for Gai Lan, I always add about half a teaspoon of sugar. And we're just gonna dunk these in as well. Now these ones can take an extra minute, so 2 minutes to blanch and cook.
And why do you put the sugar in there?
Oh, Gai Lan is a little bit bitter, so that little bit of sugar just takes it out. I'm gonna bring that to a boil and then let it cook for another minute after that, so a total of 2 minutes. And you can test the tenderness of the vegetable by just stabbing it into the stock to see if it'll go through easily or not. This should be done. Look at how nice and green they are. Okay, when they go a little bit yellow, you know you've gone too far. Okay, with the bok choy, I like to stir fry them and not just blanch them. So add about a tablespoon of oil in a frying pan. And I'm using about half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of chicken bouillon. And just stir this around a little bit. And then we're going to cover it and cook it for about a minute. Usually after washing bok choy, it holds enough liquid that it's also steaming and being fried at the same time. Okay, and we're done. Just going to add a little bit of oyster sauce right in the middle here for dipping. You don't need much because oyster sauce is pretty salty on its own. All right, are you all ready for?
The taste. You can see how long the veg is. It's kind of unruly to eat. We use our kitchen shears and we cut it down to a more, cut it down in halves. It's a more manageable size when you're eating it. I wasn't always a fan of Chinese veg growing up. It was just something that I had to get through to get to my more favorite parts of the meal. So whatever was on top of the plate or the bowl, whatever the food I was eating, I would hit the stuff that I didn't like first, cram it in my mouth, swallow it, and move on to the more enjoyable parts of the meal. But you know, you get older, your tastes change, and I really do enjoy a nice Chinese leafy veg with especially the Asian food. It just goes so much nicer with rice.
But wouldn't you say most kids don't really like green vegetables?
Vegetables, period. I think that's a pretty universal thing. So the fact that our kids eat it to begin with, I'm happy. See? Simple preparation. It's so good. Still got that crunch. And if you had, what's that process called? Blanching? If you blanched it too much and the vegetable starts to go soft and limp, not having that crunch is just not there. It's not it. It's just, it doesn't work. And I like the little flowerets too. So it gives that the variety in the mouthfeel from the textures of the stalk and the leaf and the floret. Good. So Gai Lan is usually paired with beef. So you get the oyster beef with Gai Lan. That's often what it comes with in a combination in the restaurant. And the veg just takes in that sauce really nicely. And when you pair it up with the rice, really good. All right, moving on to the Bok Choy. It gives way just enough of that crunch, but enough tenderness through the rest of the vegetable. That's how I like my vegetable. All right, moving on to probably my favorite, and it's a standard veg, you know, the Bok Choy. Let's start at the stalk end of it, shall we?
Awesome. Thanks, dude.
Thanks, dude.
As you can see, they're really simple to make. By cooking them quickly, you're keeping the nutrients in, not boiling them to death and making one big mushy mess. And they are great with all the Asian or Chinese recipes that you can find over there. See you in the next video.